Welcome to the Coffee Clutch, a social gathering for good conversation. Grab your cup and let's get started. Now, today's old saying is, you can't have your cake and eat it too. The earliest recording of this saying is in a letter dated the 14th of March, 1538, from Thomas, Duke of Norfolk, to Thomas Cromwell. This is a very good old saying, just power-packed with wisdom. You know, I think it's particularly apropos nowadays because we tend to think that if we want it or we believe it, we say it is a certain way, it is, then it is. But it's truly not so. You can't have your cake and eat it too generally means that you can't have two opposing ideas or opposing truths both be correct. For instance, you can't have a circle with corners, nor can you have a square that is round. You may want to, but you can't. It's just the way it is. And how does this apply to our everyday life? Well, I know as a child, it didn't make a lot of sense to me because I would think, well, what do you mean you can't have your cake and eat it too? I have my cake and I'm eating it too. But that's not the point. The point is once you've eaten it, you can no longer have your cake. It's gone. You simply can't both have the cake with you and eat the cake. It just isn't going to happen. It's a good lesson to learn because we are faced in our lives with many, many decisions. We do have to make our decisions, and those decisions will have consequences. We have to understand those consequences. I know as a child, on Halloween, we would go out trick-or-treating and we would come back with our stash of candy and we would be so excited for all the candy we were going to have and just enjoy it for the entire week. And it's kind of interesting because it was the one thing my mother did not dictate. She didn't say, well, you may have one piece of candy and then you're going to put it all away and then the next day you have one piece of candy. Instead, she said, well, make your own decision. Eat it as you choose. You could have it in one sitting, and you may regret that because your stomach might get sick. And then it's all gone as well. On the other hand, if you choose to have a little bit each day, then you'll have it for some time. But you can't eat it all and have it for the week. It just won't happen that way. And it was a good lesson to learn because we understood that we had to make some decisions and that our decisions had consequences, and you couldn't have two opposite things occurring at the same time, though many times we would like that to be the case. I know for myself, I took a little bit each day because in the end I wanted to have it for some time. Others sat down and ate it in one or two helpings. That was the decision they made. But we couldn't eat it all in one sitting and have it for the week. Kind of obvious, but not to a child necessarily. You know, certainly you learn that lesson as a child. You don't want to take the time to sit and do your homework, but you also don't want to get in trouble the next day at school. So you have to make a choice. Are you going to do your homework and not get in trouble? Or are you going to not do your homework and get in trouble? But not doing your homework and not getting in trouble was not an option because you can't have your cake and eat it too. And you know, as we grow older, the decisions and the consequences are far greater. And this particular saying is probably more apropos nowadays than maybe ever before. I'm old, so sometimes I feel like I'm sitting on the outside looking in at the world and looking at young people and seeing the decisions that they're making and thinking, you do think you can have your cake and eat it too, but you can't. I know that over the course of the last 20, 30 years, living together is not a big deal. I know people think that's ordinary. It's the natural step between dating and getting married. A lot of people think that. But what they haven't considered is that if you want the Marriage Act to be sacred in marriage, doesn't it have to be sacred outside of marriage? And it's not really sacred outside of marriage if everybody's living together. And so, all these marriages that seem to be falling apart, people can't seem to stay married, maybe there's a reason for that. Maybe it's because we were trying to have our cake and eat it too. And never mind religion and what religion tells you you can or cannot do. This is just sort of the natural law of the land. If you want something to be sacred within marriage, make sure you live a life with it being sacred outside of marriage. And of course, that's not the only thing. You want to be clear-headed and successful in your life with your job, making good decisions, and then doing drugs on the weekend. That's probably not going to work out real well for you. I understand from the articles that we read that there's all sorts of drug overdoses and suicides and all these things. But can we be surprised by that? Do we think we're going to have a society and a culture of people who are clear-headed and happy and maybe goal-oriented, having a sense of success, if you're doing drugs at the same time? Here in the state of Missouri, we just passed legalization of marijuana. Well, good luck with that, people. I'm old. I'll be moving on out of this world in short order. But those of you who have left behind, I don't see how you think this is going to really work out all that well. I don't really see the pros to this. I understand that I want it, and I want it now. I understand the 5-year-old mentality of, I want what I want, when I want it, how I want it, where I want it, and that's kind of how my 5-year-olds were. But as grown adults, you would kind of hope that maybe we could consider that there will be serious consequences to this. And if you want a society and a culture that has some order, safety, happiness, you've got to work for that. It doesn't just happen. I know I see around me what feels like a lot of chaos, disorder, broken families, depression, suicide seem to be the news of the day, though I don't think it's surprising. People seem to think they can have their cake and eat it too, that they can live a life any way they want, and it's all going to still turn out well. I don't believe that's the case. I believe this next generation is going to suffer quite a bit from dysfunction, disorder. We all love maybe not all of us, but a lot of us love the Hallmark movies and the happily ever after stories. The finding that person you can live your life with and share it. And life isn't going to be perfect. I mean, we grow up, we're adults, we know it's not going to be perfect. But there's a lot of joy and happiness to be had. And if you can't follow, a lot of people don't want to be in a particular religion. I happen to be Catholic. I love the Catholic faith. It puts together a very ordered life, and when you do actually follow it, the amount of joy and peace and order that you can find is phenomenal. Or it has been for me, that's for sure. And those things that seemed like a ball and chain and just rules, and you can't do this and you can't do that, as it turns out, It was protecting you from making really bad decisions that will haunt you for the rest of your life. Because you can't have order and disorder at the same time. You can't have peace and chaos at the same time. You can't have your cake and eat it too. We have to figure out what is the proper order and make our decisions carefully and wisely and not always emotionally. That's what we do as children. I would love to hear from you. I'd like to know if this particular old saying applies to anything in your life. If you can share any decision making that you had to, you were faced with and had to make the decisions and sometimes make the hard decisions so that in the end you could have that peace and success that comes from oftentimes making the hard decisions. Share with me your thoughts. I hope you push the like button and come back to visit and subscribe. Enjoy your cup of coffee.